Hi. I never thought it was going to get this bad. The hatred of men. It's been coming, and sometimes I think, am I in an echo chamber? And that's why I think it's that bad. Then I read all your comments and your emails, and I have my eyeballs. I can see in daily life how you guys are treated. But like I said, I never thought it would get this bad. Hi, and welcome to Far From Eden. Over there in Europe and in the UK, which is not technically part of the EU, they are working very hard to basically criminalize being a man. Today we have an article published online by The Conversation, which already is like, oh geez. And written by Stephanie Lamy, Lamy, not familiar. It was published a few days ago, August 21st, and it's disturbing. It is entitled, Why We Need to Approach Masculinism, I guess we're making up words, as a Terrorist Threat. It's a Q&A with our friend Stephanie here that I just mentioned. I've not read it yet. We're going to read through it together. It's disturbing. Like I said, I keep using that word, but it's shocking too. And I start to think, okay, well, I guess if I were doing what I'm doing here, over there, which is just calling out truth, exposing some truth, I guess that would be criminal. And certainly you guys, just for existing, you need to be more feminine probably to get along with the world they want. Masculinism is on the rise. I mean, let's just stop. Why are they saying masculinism? The noun is masculinity. So they're making up a new word. They're just not wanting, you know what they're not saying? They're not saying toxic masculinity. That's what they mean. Clearly, they've made up a new word. Maybe people like us have destroyed their term toxic masculinity because we've done our best to say, what are you talking about? You're calling all masculinity toxic. Okay. They probably still are. Let's see. Masculinism is on the rise. In the age of the internet, male influencers such as Andrew Tate preaching the belief that men should have more rights, power, and opportunities than women have. They have a bigger platform than ever. It's so awkwardly written. A lot of you guys always tell me it's probably written by AI. Yeah, maybe it would be written better if it was written by AI, right? So, okay, people like Andrew Tate are on the rise. So widespread has the phenomenon become that in July, the British police said that violence against women and girls had reached epidemic levels and now constituted a national emergency, pointing out to 3,000 offenses being recorded each day across England and Wales. Elsewhere in Europe, mass killings by incels are being foiled by the police, and domestic violence is growing. With this in mind, the UK government's new Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has called to treat extreme misogyny in the same way as the far right in jihadism. And if there's one woman who will agree with her, it's Stephanie Lamy. Okay. I wonder why these sorts of crimes, if in fact they are going up in the UK and Europe, I wonder why that might be as of late. Has there been any, I don't know, have there been any changes in the demographics? It's funny because there are plenty of scenarios in the UK where they have been trying to say, certain groups have been trying to say, look, this is a problem. our girls aren't safe, our women aren't safe. This is a problem. This is a problem. And the police and the government say, no, it isn't. I don't know what you're talking about. And I guess we're just going to wrap it all into, oh, man, bad. Well, not all man. Being very careful with my words. You guys know what I mean. If you've seen more of my videos, you'll be picking up what I'm throwing down. Okay. And it starts off with some lady named Natalie Sauer asking, could you start off by defining masculinism for our readers? Oh, we're interviewing Stephanie Lamy. Oh, great. Okay. So defining masculinism for our readers. And Stephanie says, there are a variety of definitions for masculinism, especially in French. So in French, one would consider masculinism as a branch of anti-feminism. Now I go a little bit further than that, because for me, it's not just anti-feminism, because some of the groups don't confront feminism directly. It's always in a roundabout manner. I'm glad I don't live over there. Also, I'm sorry, I find it pretty funny if the French are going to define masculinity. That's pretty darn funny. I don't think that that's the group that should be defining it. But I'm biased. I think the American male should define masculinity. But like I said, I'm biased. There are some, there's probably some French masculine men. Probably, maybe. Sorry if you're from France. I'm so sorry. But you might get it if you are from France. You might actually agree with me. Let me know in the comments. So I define masculinism as a set of ideological offers, which are based on male identity and have been constructed, broadcast, and operationalized in various radical milieux, on and offline. These ideologies glorify violence under all forms in order to maintain, if not reinforce, male domination on women and gender minorities. Now, we did have somebody early on, well, not early on of this channel, but when it really started to grow, we did have somebody in the comments that I had to keep kicking out that was calling for such type things like violence, which was really shocking to me because I had never heard of anybody in this, in this lane talking about these things, being pro-masculinity and anti-feminist, pro-family, et cetera, et cetera. And I never heard any of those people, even the men's rights people, I never heard any of them want violence, but that guy did. And so that's rare. Again, we go back to the man versus bear, and they're like, I'd rather have a bear. Well, yeah, because you are just trying to make a statement. You have no idea about bears. And you think all men are dangerous and everything because you've been brainwashed into it. So again, it's because that one guy, one of the guys, and he was in the comments, for like half a second. And then, but that's the one guy. You don't have to, make a new word up, masculinism, and call it all that. It was not about that. Any person that's like that, it's something else. And they'll find a reason. But that's not really a reason. And it certainly shouldn't be used to paint everyone else. How are you going to say, like the one guy who says, oh yeah, we should have that, we should, take up arms against it. And you're going to say that's the same as the guy who had his, finances ruined, his kids alienated from him and taken, he never sees them. And you're going to say if that guy's upset about it and says, hey, this is wrong, and the family court system needs to change, that those are the same guy? They're not. They're not. This is going to make me mad. Oh, sometimes they just say the quiet parts out loud. She goes on, this Stephanie chick. It's my definition. The definitions that exist kind of make them sound like they're social movements. And I want to make it very clear that they are not regular social movements. These are a milieu of radicalization. I believe the Hague's International Center for Counterterrorism uses that term as well, that build these ideologies over time and spread them through different media. Then within masculinism, you have different movements. Oh, golly, here we go. You ready? Are you ready? Hopefully nobody's just eaten. Okay, so here she's going to explain to us what the different movements are, and you're going to love the first movement. It's not what you think. Incels, parentheses, involuntary celibates, who are heterosexual men who believe that society discriminates against them because of their looks and therefore owes them genetically superior women, are probably the movement that most people focus on, though they're not the ones that produce the most propaganda, which would be men going their own way, parentheses, MGTOWs. What? There's a group called I know what the incels are. I have a video from a couple years ago, and it's entitled In Defense of Incels. Incels are involuntary celibate men, and they are being treated badly it's not by society. Hold on, let me argue with this sentence right here. Society discriminates against them because of their looks. No, women discriminate against them because they feel entitled to the 8s, 9s, and 10s, because the 8s, 9s, and 10s will, have the hanky-panky with them. If it's a slow night or it's the best they can get or the lights are low or what have you, they might do that. Or they think they're entitled to it because they have this many likes or this many subscribers or this many followers on Instagram. So therefore, I'm this value, so I must be able to get an 8, 9, or 10. And they will not look at the guys that are on their level, which leaves those good men alone. And I have never once, you guys tell me, I have never once heard that society owes them genetically superior women. I have never heard this. I think if I've never heard of it, I have no idea. It must be some very small sliver, some dude in some basement somewhere, or more likely in this woman's imagination, because she also calls it a movement, and she calls MGTOWs a movement, which we all know it isn't. There are so many of you who had gone their own way long before the term was ever coined, because of, it's just a reaction that men have had, a necessary one to the situation. But women and feminist men think that it's this outward, intentional, aggression towards women, and it's not. I'm not going to speak for the men who have gone their own way, but I've heard from them, and it's not that. Here we go. MGTOWs are based on a libertarian ideology. For them, heterosexual relationships are a form of taxation on men, which is actually very perverse because it's the other way around in reality. But what it is today is men deciding that they can sexually and financially exploit women. A very famous MGTOW is Andrew Tate, for example. No, he isn't. No, he's not. Oh my God. They love to just say Andrew Tate, and then they think everyone's going to be, oh my God. He does not represent this group. He doesn't. There are some younger men that do look up to him. There are some positive things that he says. He also seems to have changed quite a bit from when he first sort of broke out. But yeah, if you can't really say any names and you're just going to be vague and just keep saying his name over and over again, it doesn't help your argument. She goes on. It was one question and she's still talking. Then you have people called pickup artists. This is a radical milieu, that's her favorite word, that allows men to transmit knowledge to other men on how to circumvent women's consent in order to multiply access to women's bodies. Oh my God. No. radical milieu that allows men to transmit knowledge. Somebody used a thesaurus. No, they're talking about how to get dates, look, back in my day, it was like how to get chicks. How's it different? It's not different. They're mad because men don't want to marry them. So far, that's all I read. They're mad because men don't want to marry them and are just doing fine. That's it. Men don't want to marry them, and they're putting in whatever tiny investment that the women have always put in, and the women are having a giant tantrum and trying to say, he's being mean to me, teacher. That's what this is. All right. Incel, MGTOW, and PUA are three forms of ideologies, basically where men get together. They don't get together. No, they don't. There are no MGTOW meetings. What is she talking about? Oh my God. Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, where men get together, think about how they can assert their dominion over women. What? I call these relationists because their ideology is based on how these men situate themselves in relation to women. Yeah, because they used to just go along and just marry you out of obligation, no matter your body count, no matter your attitude, no matter any of that. And now they're like, I don't want to play anymore. You don't play by any kind of rules. You cheat. Jeez. This isn't the case of every masculinist movement. Take, for example, the fathers' rights movement, who believed that fathers are being discriminated against in family courts because of what they call feminized justice. It's in quotation marks. I don't understand why, but okay. Which you have in the UK as well. Their way of performing masculinity is not through the relationship they have with women or lack of wanting to have a relationship with women, but by ensuring that even after divorce, the privileges fathers have are preserved. Wait a minute. Is she saying that fathers have privileges over mothers in Western society? No, they don't. No, they don't. The children, because of Queen Victoria, as y'all have taught me, the children go to the mother all the time. It's absolutely right. It's a real thing. It's a real problem. And if men and women are supposedly equal, split the kids up or give the kids to the one who can afford them. No, they don't do that. They give the mother preferential treatment. The other thing in a relationship, in marriages, you will see this often where maybe both of them work, when they get together, and then later, the woman just quits her job. You don't see that as often with the men. Women have that privilege in society. It's just more accepted for the woman to just say, yeah, I don't want to continue to work. But it's not accepted for men to do that. Also, father's privileges, you guys. I am sorry I read that off the page. I am sorry those words came out of my mouth. That's probably even more disgusting than everything she said about incels, because this is about your children. She's trying to say that you guys want to get in there and mess up the court system so that you can maintain some giant privileges that you had as a father. Next question for our friend, whatever her name is. I'm so mad. Stephanie. Do we know how many men in Europe are actively involved in masculinism? This is crazy. It's difficult, and the trajectories are very fluid. So men can participate for a while, come out of it, go back into it, just like jihadism, right? So we have no estimates of numbers whatsoever. No, you wouldn't if you're making it up, would you? You wouldn't have any kind of numbers. Give me a break. Where do these MGTOWs meet? Where are these meetings? What's baloney? But other people are going to believe it. What about the men? This is another question for Stephanie. What about the men that join? 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 It's not a club. Men don't do that. Women do that. Oh my God. They have no idea. They don't know men. They don't understand men, and they don't bother to ask. They just assume that they know. And men don't do that. Okay. They don't need a club. They don't need a club. They're not having that. Oh my gosh. So she actually responds by saying, good question. If you look at the incels, for example, it's more younger men, but it's not only white men, right? Why is she saying that while she's talking? I guess she's shocked. But it's not only white men, right? There's a huge incel community in India where there is a perceived lack of access to women. With the fathers' rights movement, they're mostly divorced men in their 30s and 40s. With the fathers' rights movement, what do you mean? It's not with the fathers' rights movement. Feminism is out of control in India. MGTOW India is big. These women, it's bad over there. They will just threaten to, if the banker comes to, take the house back, they'll say, nope, I will accuse you of graping. I mean, they're so bad over there. And that's why this is a reaction. All of these things that men are feeling right now, and the way that they're behaving and moving is a reaction. And it's not a group, it's not a club. So many of you are like, I went my own way a long time ago, way before I ever heard of it. There are men right now going their own way while they're still married. There are men right now going their own way who've never heard about going your own way. They've just said, okay, because men are cost benefit ratio. They get it. They think about these things and they analyze the situation and they realize, oh, this is not the good way to go. Marriage is not if fathers' rights if it's so great to be a father and you're so privileged, how come men aren't going to do that? How come that's not what they're always trying to do? If fathers have all these privileges, why aren't the men wanting to get married and have kids? It's because there are no mothers and there are no wives. It's because of feminism. And you have not heard this chick say much about feminism in this so far. And it's almost glaring to me, because what the men are doing individually, not in clubs, not in movements, is a reaction or a consequence of feminism. They're still doing it. The women are still behaving in a certain way. The men are reacting to it. And the women have no idea it has anything to do with their bad behavior and feminism's bad behavior. No idea. When they started attacking fathers' rights, I was like, oh no, it's on now. The specificity of these different ideological formats is that they will always provide an answer to a dilemma in a man's life. Well, I hope so. Yeah, is that wrong? Are men not supposed to find the answers to the dilemmas? So if somebody is divorcing, well, you have the father's rights. If you can't get a girlfriend, you have the pickup artists. If the pickup artists don't work, which they don't, actually they do, if you're an 8, 9, or a 10, they'll renounce them and they might go to the incels. No, they'll just be, how do you decide to be involuntarily celibate? Involuntary means against you. You don't want it to be that way. Good Lord. They might go to the incels. So it's really something incredibly smart to be able to offer men a package solution to re-empower them, somehow based on a conspiracy theory that feminists are at the origin of all their problems. Well, I am a fan of those conspiracy theories. Funny how the whole term was just made up, much like this term masculinism. It doesn't even flow off the tongue. Conspiracy theory was also made up so that people who didn't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the only one shooter to eliminate JFK, they call those people conspiracy theorists to, make them look crazy. But guess what? Now we all know. And I've always thought that. So yeah, we're the conspiracy theorists, but it's also true. God. Okay, next question for Stephanie. Let's talk about how masculinism is impacting our democracies. You are based in France and have been monitoring masculinism there in particular. How did the community react to the rise of far right prior to the snap elections in July? I watched different channels. Oh, this is her responding. I watched different channels before and they weren't very implicated. I think it's wrong to think that all of the different milieu de radicalisation. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she was saying it en français, are far right. I think it's wrong to think that all of the different milieu, are far right. All right, that's interesting. What I've observed is that they don't talk about regular politics that much. For them, everything is about access to women's bodies or men's rights or men's needs. It's not about far right, far left, right or left. And that's actually one of the tactics these militants use to recruit from anywhere on the spectrum and then bring it to the far right. So for me, masculinism has to be seen like some form of meta politics. All right, maybe I'm stupid. That just sounded like a lot of words in a lot of different directions and didn't say much at all. But definitely use the word milieu again. So I guess points for that. I'm sorry, I'm so sassy about this. I hope it's not irritating. It's my defense mechanism to this kind of garbage. This is borderline hate speech. I don't even believe in that because I think all speech is free speech, but this. Okay. She goes on. This is with the caveat that masculinism ideas and the ideologies in themselves do have these elements of hierarchy of people and groups, essential Darwinism linked to the far right. No, hierarchies are true. Shall we bring up the lobsters again? A la Jordan Peterson? Hierarchies are true in nature, and men understand that. Women hate it. That's why they love communism so much. Maybe she's about to talk about that, since anything other than communism appears to be far right. But if you ask the members of these communities, they'll all say they're apolitical, which is false, of course, given their objective is to normalize violence against women and male domination. Pickup artists like Alex Hitchens will prone grape. All right. No, you're not. You're not about that. Now, I can't speak for the jihadists, and I won't. But it's not the same culture. And to mix them together is pretty, it's a betrayal, honestly. It's a betrayal of most of you who are not from that corner of the world, walk of life, point of view. The thing is, in the West, in Christendom, men have always had more power. Just because they had more power doesn't mean they're bad. That's a communism thought. That's a Marxist idea, that whoever's in power is bad. Men were in power because they're stronger than women. They're more capable than women. They're more competent than women. When women are pregnant, we are, vulnerable. You know what I mean? It wasn't because they're bad. If they're bad, why is there air conditioning? Why is there heat? Why do I have a pillow for my back right now? Why? Because they did it for us. They built this lovely society where the sewage just goes away and the clean water comes from nowhere. It just appears. And you flip a switch and magical lights come on. They've created, if you compare it to just like being in the forest and you have to get your food and get your water and build your shelter. We are so distanced from living in just nature with no society, no civilization. We do not appreciate everything that's been put in place so that we have such comfortable lives in the West when you compare it to what it would be like if you're just living, a frontier life. I think somebody helped me out the other day. It said Paleolithic, like you're in the Paleolithic era. You're like cave people. That's a lot harder. I mean, we can't even imagine. I've never even been camping. So I, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. But this is the world these women are living in. Despite this, you have to bear in mind that modern masculinists started in the 60s with the far left. Interesting. You had women's groups talking about their working conditions, and then men decided to go off and talk about their own condition as well. Oh, how dare they? You mean to tell me that women had a complaint and then men were like, we also have a complaint? And how dare those men? Shut up and do your work, Bob. Really? Really? I should contact this woman. Half of them continued talking about how you can deconstruct that, and the other half used the tools that they learned with the feminist movement and used it against feminists and women in general. So you always need to remember that masculinism did start on the far left, and it brought people to far right ideas for want of party politics. Okay, you never said what they did. You said they were complaining about their work conditions, and then they used the feminist stuff against it. She never said what actually they did. So therefore, I don't believe her. Next question for Stephanie. Let's talk about your book, Masculinist Terror, which comes out in French this autumn. Could you tell us what the main thesis is? The thesis is, she hates men. The book is I do not know this word, plaidoirie. It's a French word. The book is a plaidoirie to securitize the subject of masculinist violence, because it is an underlooked form of terrorism. I go through the different ways that security doctrines have marginalized gender-specific violence in their fight against radicalization. I know it's not quite the case in England, but it is the case in France. So if you look at the different documentation on anti-radicalization programs there, they will not probe into the background of the person to check whether there were instances of DV as a child or as an adult. They won't look at whether these acts of violence are inspired by masculinist ideology. And even the way that media portrays these acts of violence is more as interpersonal violence than terrorist attacks. Yeah, because it's not. There are some bad people. All men are not bad. Are there some bad men? Yes. Does that mean all men are bad? No. Not even close. You wouldn't have society and you wouldn't have high trust society if they were bad. The proof is right there. But these women, they'd probably choose the bear, so you can't have a conversation with them anyway. You should just ask somebody that when you walk up to them, just to see, are we in reality or are we not in reality? Okay, next question. Could you bring up concrete examples of masculinist violence in France? Yes, please say something concrete, for heaven's sakes. We had a masculinist attack in 2020 with the M of Melanie Guillon, who was, I'm going to put it on there. Hopefully YouTube will understand that we are reporting news. Who was knifed 80 times by her ex-partner, Michael Filetas. He produced a large amount of MGTOW propaganda, which is still online. Okay, we had a masculinist attack 2020 with the murder of Melanie, I already said it, who was knifed 80 times by her ex-partner. Okay. Sounds like there was a bad relationship, and he was a person that couldn't handle it. And that does not mean that that's everybody. Oh my gosh. But he's been sentenced for life for M, not on terrorism charges. And even his lawyer said that he was completely radicalized by the MGTOW movement. Yeah, that's just his attorney. His attorney's going to do everything he can to advocate for his client. That's the attorney's job. I don't like that he's thrown MGTOW under the bus, but I do understand that a defense attorney is going to do everything he can to advocate for his client. It doesn't mean it's true, and it isn't, because MGTOW is not a violence organization. It's not an organization, so whatever. Anyway, on his YouTube channel, you can actually see when he was radicalized in 2017. I'll have to check that out later. You can see somebody asking him, "Hey, are you MGTOW?" and him replying by video, "My God, I'm discovering this movement." That's not you guys. You can really see it in the videos where he's been it's a made-up word, conscientized, like it's in his conscience, conscientized to the ideology. He starts looking it up on Wikipedia, starts reading about it, and then does a video saying, "MGTOW forever." It's the same thing as the jihadist's propaganda since 2014. I don't know if she meant jihadist. It's not spelled that way. For me, it's exactly the same thing, the same motivations, the same rhythm of talking, the same way of saying that, yes, they're all in it. They're all in for the cause. And that was Mikel Faletas. There's no cause. It's self-protection. It's just, no, thank you. I'll be over here. No, thank you. That's what it is. That's what MGTOW is. It's like, no, thank you. No, I understand the power that the women have with the state, and I don't want to get mixed up in it because it's dangerous for me. I'll tell you what they're not doing. MGTOW's not putting out articles like this. You know, they're not. If they were some organization, and like there would be, I need to talk to these people. It was first portrayed in the media as a femicide, which is great. But it was more than that. It was actually a terrorist attack because motivated by a violent ideology. Oh, she's excited to put all men as terrorists, isn't she? She's excited about this. I want to know what's in her past. I want to know how she was raised. I want to know who hurt her, because she's reacting to something that is not happening. He clearly said in his videos that if a woman did something bad to him, that she needed to be punished. He did it. He tried to grape her sister, and he tried to, end her new companion. He was equipped. He bought night goggles. This was a commando operation. The book is about trying to understand why we're not talking about this kind of violence in security terms, because he was a bad guy. He was going to do something like that anyway in his life. He would have attached it to anything that would have come across. He could have read, the Grimm's fairy tales and been like, I understand what I need to do now. And just, you know what I mean? He's a bad guy. And if it hadn't been her who hurt him, it would have been somebody else who hurt him. It would have been his boss. It would have been a parent. It would have been whatever. That is a bad guy. Just like there have been women that have, ended men. It doesn't mean that women are it doesn't mean it's a movement. You know what I mean? There are some bad people. They want to take these examples where people have been bad and broken laws and harmed others and say that's all of them. And you see how much they have to stretch it. It's really hard to come up with concrete examples to really back up these giant accusations that these people are making. It's disgusting what they're accusing men of in general. Okay, next question for Stephanie. So what policy recommendations do you make, if any? I mean, for heaven's sakes. I'm sorry. I run these like live, so we're just gonna have a little allergy second. Talk amongst yourselves. There we go. Allergy second is over. We are good. It's kind of like our southern border here in the United States. You don't need new policies. You don't need new laws. It's already illegal to cross the southern border. We already have border control. We already have the rules. We already have the laws. You just have to enforce them. So there are already laws about not eliminating people through violence. There's already laws about not harming other people. There's already laws against that. So what kind of new law? What are you going to do? They just want to malign masculinity. They want to scare, and they want to keep radicalized. I want to talk about radicalization. Do you ever wonder why the women picked the bear? It's stuff like this. It's garbage like this that makes them think that men are dangerous in general. That they think backwards. They think, oh, there might be a safe one here or there, but most of them you got to be careful of, because if they had the chance, they would hurt you. And it's not true. It is not true. Not in the West. So here are her policy recommendations, I suppose. So you asked whether in Europe or in France there have been progress. So you asked whether in Europe or in France there have been progress. English is hard. I know that at a European level, they're already looking at incel violence as an emerging threat. Well, you know what happens when I wonder if we could have seen this coming when you import a lot of military-age men, and there are no women for them. What possibly could happen? That's a lot of testosterone coming from a completely different culture, and there are no women. Incel violence as an emerging threat. I know that's the case in Canada and in the UK, where you have had horrific incel attacks with Jake Devison, who eliminated 5 people in August 2021 in Plymouth, was radicalized in the incel milieu. Well, Jake Davison doesn't sound like he came from any other culture. Isn't that interesting who she chose? In France, that's not the case. But I think we need to move out of just looking at incels and look at it more holistically. Yeah, we've got to back up and look at it more holistically, because it's easier to not give concrete examples and talk about feelings. You need to do more education in schools. There's currently a huge debate in France about how boys and girls are supposed to relate to each other. Good God, we used to know this stuff. That's why we read fairy tales on Sundays, because they knew, and we're trying to remember that we knew. How boys and girls are supposed to relate to each other? Oh my God. Okay, breathe. Whew. Far-right groups want to ban gender and sex education, which teach things like anatomy, respect, and consent. I think there needs to be more education, not less. I think the parents need to teach their children about such things. And I know people will say, well, some parents don't. Well, I'm sorry. Who are these people in the schools? Do you really want strangers telling your children about this stuff? They are strangers. You don't know them. You don't know what they're going to add. And it is not just anatomy, respect, and consent. I'm sorry. Some of us, I'm not even a parent, but I was thinking of myself as a parent, but some parents don't want to teach about consent necessarily, because there is no consent until marriage. So even the idea that it's your decision and that teaches something that a lot of people wouldn't want their kids to learn. Notice I'm not saying that everybody needs to learn my way. I'm not. I'm saying respect that some parents are not finding it to be a good thing that a stranger would teach them stuff. And they also, we know this, they want to teach way more than this stuff. They want their I don't know over there, but Europe tends to be, especially France, way more liberal than the United States. So you guys are probably familiar with the types of books that the left wants to put in schools, and it is not anatomy. I'm fine with anatomy being taught. I'm totally fine with anatomy being taught. It should be taught. It's a reproductive system. It should be taught. You know, I learned it growing up, just, you know, being on farms and ranches and horses and, you know, and everybody used to grow up and learn that, because you'd have goats or chickens and they'd make more of themselves. And it wasn't scandalous and it wasn't degenerate, because it wasn't allowed to be. Notice, I still haven't said that everyone should do it my way and other people should be forced to do it my way. I just want to stop being forced. I want people who think like me and similarly to me and you guys, I want us to stop being forced to do it their way. The other thing is we need more male role models that will be able to talk to young men. And I think that's a huge point, because it can't always be women talking to children, which is, again, you know, fairly sexist. Right. But you're pushing the men away and telling them masculinity is toxic. So you only want the men who think and act like you. Another issue is how terrorism and the media production feed one another. They feed one another, the media feeds it, really? Like you right now? I think we need to train journalists also to ask the right questions. When there is DV, when there is grape, always ask the question, has this person been in this milieu de radicalization? If there is a grape, have they been in contact with pickup artists? How about we ask the question, what's all the evidence that there even was one? What about we talk about all the false accusations? What about we talk about punishing people who make false accusations? There is something very simple that one can do, and that would probably produce more information about these movements, which we don't know much about. No, you don't know much about it. You're making it up. We also need to finance more research. If it became a national security issue, then that'd be the case. She's doing hint, hint. She wants it to be a national security issue. Like here in the States, where they made domestic terrorism a national security issue. And then we all went, I see why you did the Patriot Act. Or I always knew why you did the Patriot Act. Okay, let's continue with Stephanie, who lives in France. Here's another question for her. Have you met with masculinists in real life? Do you think the interviewer really believes her? Okay, here's Stephanie's reaction. So funny story, not so funny story. When I was researching the MGTOWs in early 2020 in Toulouse, it happened that I was just at my dog park 50 meters away, and one of the guys that I regularly talk to was sitting on the bench, and he said, "So, you're a feminist?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm a masculinist." Maybe that's where she got it. And I said, "Okay, so what movement do you belong to?" And he said, MGTOW. Hey, did you guys know that what just happened was horrific? There was one of the guys, he kills his ex. Okay, this did not happen. This interaction did not happen. That's how I learned about Michael Filletes before all the information came out. I was probably the first person outside of the milieu to know that one of the MGTOWs had emmed Melanie Guillaume. I don't think she ever had that talk. No, and if she did, he didn't say that. He didn't say that. It's so funny. Oh my God. So bad. And so I was sitting there watching the dogs, and he tells me this horrific story. I said, "Well, don't you think that's kind of horrific?" And he said, "Well, yes." And I said, "Well, don't you think maybe it's time to move on from those people?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I like the self-help side." I said, "Well, there are a lot of self-help books that don't actually say that you need to women." Do you think this conversation happened? Let me know in the comments. Tell me if you think this conversation is real or not. My goodness. That's basically one of my weirdest physical encounters with a masculinist. Have I met them otherwise? Yes. They physically intimidated me, found out where I lived, and came. That's the way she worded it. I'm not trying to. No. Okay. They've intimidated her. How? Give me an example. They have physically intimidated me. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. She could have passed by somebody on the street and like accidentally bumped in and been like, oh, I think that's a masculinist. I'm definitely going to keep that. That was something that happened to me. I don't believe her. I don't believe her. Based on all this other rubbish that she has said, and all of these are movements and they get together and like meetings. No. This is just to scare and make women think that this is who men are and this is what they're doing, and they're not. But if you're a chick and you can't get an 8, 9, or 10, and you think you're too good for your level, maybe another 4, yeah, it's better to go, oh, they're all terrorists, aren't they? That's why I can't get a date. That's why no one wants to marry me. Maybe, you know what? It's probably Stephanie. I gotta show you guys her picture. Hold on. I'm gonna show you guys her picture at the end of the article. I don't want to mess up my pages. I'll get all confused. So I'm gonna show you guys her picture. You're gonna be like, oh, never mind. It all makes sense. So that was one of her. Okay. Where did I leave off? I lost my spot here. Have I met them otherwise? Yes, they physically intimidated me, right? Found out where I lived and came. Came where? Those were the father's rights. What, the ones who, maybe they had something to say. Maybe they thought, hey, maybe I can explain it to you and then you'll understand. And maybe you'll, have I talked to him? Have I talked to them? I've talked to them through my online persona. I think at one point when you're researching these movements, you need to protect yourself as well as not put yourself out there physically. So she's like, I don't know any of them. I've never talked to any of them because I have to be safe. No, it's because it's not real. You're talking about the boogeyman and groups of boogeymen. Okay, next question for her. We're getting there. We're getting to the end. We're almost done. Let's say a reader of this interview is in touch with someone they suspect drifted towards masculinism. What can they do? Oh, this will be fun. I think we need to look at the research about conspiracy theories because that's what it is. Ideologies which view feminists as this little group of people who have the means to transform the world, just as many conspiracy theories are based on anti-Semitic tropes. Well, we went there all of a sudden, didn't we? Nobody was talking about that. Now all of a sudden. Well, it is something that shuts people up. So the first thing is to humanize women and their point of view, because the whole point of these ideologies is to erase women's point of view. That's exactly what she's done this whole article, is dehumanize men and erase their points of view and turn them into boogeyman monsters. But communists do. Communists accuse others of doing what they're doing. Encourage that person to ask themselves, what does she think? How does she feel? I think if you start humanizing women's voices, that's already huge. I've spoken to other journalists who cover this issue. So Pauline Ferrari said to me in June, I think we've read something from her. Pauline Ferrari said to me in June that what she does is leave little hints all over the place. She'll leave out a book or a documentary recommendation. I've actually had somebody leave out a book for me before. That's on a different topic, but yeah, watch out for that. That's one of the things the leftists do. They think that's going to matter. Oh boy, because they're so self-righteous that, oh, if you only understood. And it's like, lady, you don't understand. You're doing exactly what you're accusing men of doing. You got the wrong men in mind too. I don't know. She's not thinking of you guys. Okay. You need to keep in touch with these people. She can't even come close to them. Remember, she's got to protect herself from us. You need to keep the human link going because the radicalization process tends to tear individuals away from their support systems. Yeah. Oh, yeah. People don't like you when you say, a family should be a man, a wife, children, and they should stay together through thick and thin. And ideally, the woman would stay home and homeschool the children and take care of the home, and the man would be the provider, and that, they would all, work for each other. I am a terrorist for that. Now, there is another thing that happens a lot on social media is that a lot of people try to argue with different masculinists. Don't do that. First of all, it's a waste of time. If it's a waste of time to argue with them, do you think it's going to be good to leave out a book? First of all, it's a waste of time. If you don't know the person personally, they will never believe you. There's no point arguing with them. And it gives them the attention that they seek, and they will be able to reaffirm their own belief systems, right? MGTOWs are not seeking attention. It's absolutely the opposite. Make yourself small so you're a smaller target. They're not seeking attention. Fathers' rights are seeking help and justice. Incels are lonely because they have been discarded and disenfranchised. So you need to treat it like one. And I have no idea what she's talking about. A belief system. You need to treat it like one, and you need to treat people who are radicalized by these movements also like what you said. She's giving me a headache. There is a huge link about how to react, how to portray them. And I think we have to stop laughing at them. I didn't know they were laughing. That's for sure. We need to take them very seriously and listen to what they are saying. Right, you do, because you are not listening to what they are saying. You completely, these are complete falsehoods about who they are. I'm looking for her picture. And I just can't. On the thumbnail, I have the picture of the Yvette Cooper in the UK who wants to, enforce all these laws and everything that she referred to earlier. Here is Stephanie. There you go. That's who we've been listening to this whole time. Women used to smile. People used to smile in their pictures. I guess feminists don't. I guess it's weak. I guess that's what a man would want. So you can't do that. It's like long hair offends feminists because they're like, oh, you must be doing it for a man, because you don't really do it for yourself. And I guess for attention, some girls would, but not really. It's not for yourself because it's so much work. But wow. So that's disturbing. Like I said about 40 times in the beginning, but that's what they think of you guys. And they want to use even more power of the state against you. I was just like, what's behind me? And, it's terrible. I want to share something with you guys that's a lot better than her picture. If she smiled, if she looked pleasant and not so angry, it wouldn't be such a thing. But she just looks so mean and hateful. Anyway, see the new flowers up there? A writing student gave those to me, and very nice. And I moved my little menagerie animals, spread them out a little. They were getting a little close together, but that was so sweet. And I want to share it with you because they're beautiful. But also, she said they're from our farm. And I was like, oh, really? I mean, they're really pretty. Like, they look like better than a florist. I said, wow, from your farm? She said, yeah, we had a sinkhole, so my mom planted flowers. Well, they have multiple children, and the mom stays at home and, does the farm stuff, does the home stuff, does the kids stuff, and, dad works. It's just lovely. And you've never seen more mannerly, sweet, hardworking little kids, and boy, in this day and age, that is hard to come by. It's refreshing. So I'm super, those flowers mean a lot to me because it's like, it's a days gone by, you know? So I wish there were more women like that were out there, because she's definitely a wife, It's a breath of fresh air. And I am so sorry about all of this, because it's just horrible. But you guys have been through so much by now, it probably is not as shocking to you, and not as, you're just like, that's just another hit. You already know who these people are. You already know who the women are. Or you probably would never have kept listening to me. I'm just sorry that it's like that. You don't deserve it. You don't. So I hate ending on like a sad note, but hey, we got each other, right? We do. So I hope you have fed your souls today on this Saturday. I hope that you're protecting your peace from people like this, and from people who would choose a bear. Protect your peace from those people. And I love you guys. And I'll see you on the next one. Okay? Take care.